Once you master emotional intelligence, dark psychology won't work on you. What if the reason manipulation keeps showing up in your life isn't because people are powerful, but because no one ever taught you how to understand what happens inside you when pressure appears? Think about it. Most people don't lose control because someone forces them. They lose control because an emotion takes over before they even realize what's happening. A sudden guilt, a quiet fear of disappointing someone, an uncomfortable tension in the room. That feeling that says, fix this, say something, explain yourself. And before you know it, you've crossed your own boundary. Not because you wanted to, but because the emotion felt unbearable. That's where dark psychology lives. Not in manipulation books, not in tricks, not in power moves. It lives in the moment between emotion and awareness. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never experience manipulation the same way again. Dark psychology doesn't begin with control. It begins with emotional confusion. Someone says something that sounds small but lands heavy. Someone goes silent right after you speak up. Someone looks disappointed when you say no. Someone praises you, then suddenly pulls away. Nothing dramatic happens, but inside you, something shifts. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts replaying the moment. You wonder if you said too much, if you were too cold, if you misunderstood, if you should fix it. And that inner discomfort becomes louder than your clarity. This is where most people give their power away. Not because they are weak, but because they were never taught how to sit with emotional discomfort without obeying it. Emotional intelligence changes that completely. Emotional intelligence is not about staying calm. It's about staying aware when emotions rise. It's about noticing what you're feeling before it turns into behavior. Because once you understand your emotional patterns, manipulation has nowhere to hide. Here's something important. Manipulators don't create emotions in you. They activate emotions that already exist. Guilt that was learned early, fear of conflict, need for approval, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being abandoned. If those emotions run your decisions, control feels natural. But when you recognize them as internal responses, not external truths, the spell breaks. Most people think emotional intelligence means being nice, patient, understanding. But real emotional intelligence is deeper than that. It's knowing when your empathy is being used against you. It's knowing when guilt is being triggered intentionally. It's knowing when discomfort is meant to push you into compliance. And once you know, you don't need to fight. You just don't move. Manipulation collapses without reaction. There's a moment almost everyone has experienced. You finally express a need, a boundary, a limit, and the other person's energy changes. They don't shout, they don't argue, they just seem hurt. Most people immediately feel responsible. They rush to explain. They soften their words. They take part of it back. They over-justify. But emotionally intelligent awareness notices something subtle. The emotional reaction appeared after the boundary, and that timing matters because it tells you the emotion is not information, it's influence. So instead of absorbing it, you stay present. You don't harden, you don't attack, you don't disappear, you simply don't abandon yourself. That single decision makes you extremely difficult to manipulate. Dark psychology relies on urgency. It needs you to act before you think. It needs you to feel responsible before you understand. It needs emotional speed. Emotional intelligence slows everything down. You stop reacting automatically. You stop explaining immediately. You stop filling silence with self-doubt. And silence becomes your protection. Here's what changes when emotional intelligence grows. You stop assuming emotions mean you're wrong. You realize feeling guilty doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Feeling tension doesn't mean you need to fix it. Feeling discomfort doesn't mean danger. These realizations quietly dismantle control. Another thing emotionally intelligent people understand is emotional ownership. They know what belongs to them and what doesn't. Your feelings belong to you. Your actions belong to you. Other people's reactions belong to them. This distinction alone removes so much power from manipulation, because manipulators blur responsibility. They make you feel responsible for their moods, their disappointment, their anger, their silence. Once you stop carrying emotions that aren't yours, the weight lifts, And when the weight lifts, control disappears. Emotionally intelligent people don't argue their boundaries. They don't try to convince others to understand. They don't debate their needs. They simply live. When awareness becomes permanent, manipulation becomes obvious. There's a moment that arrives quietly once emotional intelligence becomes part of who you are. Nothing dramatic happens. No confrontation, no sudden confidence boost, just a subtle internal shift. The same situations appear, the same people, the same emotional pressure. But this time, it doesn't land the same. You feel the emotion rise, and instead of drowning in it, you notice it. That's the moment everything changes, because manipulation only works when emotions feel urgent and unquestionable. Once emotions become something you can observe, control collapses. Here's what emotionally intelligent people experience that others don't. They feel discomfort, but they don't panic. They feel guilt, but they don't obey it. They feel tension, but they don't rush to fix it. And that pause, that tiny space between feeling and reacting, is where power lives. Most people think manipulation is about what others do, but it's actually about what you do when emotions rise. Do you explain? Do you apologize? Do you overthink? Do you retreat? Do you give in just to restore comfort? Emotional intelligence interrupts that pattern. You stop asking, how do I make this feeling go away? And start asking, why did this feeling appear right now? That question alone dismantles control, because dark psychology depends on you believing emotions are emergencies. They're not. They're information, and emotionally intelligent people read information instead of reacting to it. Another shift begins to happen. You stop chasing emotional closure. Manipulation often hides behind unfinished conversations, silence, and ambiguity. Someone pulls away. Someone leaves things unclear. Someone creates emotional distance without explanation. Most people spiral. They replay conversations. They assume fault. They seek reassurance. They reach out just to end the discomfort. Emotionally intelligent people notice something else. They notice how silence is being used. They notice how uncertainty creates anxiety. They notice how the lack of clarity pressures them to move. So instead of chasing closure, they stay still. They don't fill gaps with self-blame. They allow things to remain unresolved. And unresolved situations lose their emotional grip when you're not afraid of them. This is uncomfortable at first, because many people were taught that peace comes from fixing everything. But emotional intelligence teaches a different truth. Peace comes from not abandoning yourself to fix what isn't yours. Another change becomes obvious in how you handle conflict. You no longer argue emotionally. You don't defend your character. You don't explain your intentions. You don't try to prove you're good, kind, or reasonable. You state your truth calmly, and then you stop. That's it. This confuses people who rely on emotional escalation because they expect resistance, guilt, or collapse. They expect you to over-engage. When you don't, the power dynamic flips. Not because you dominate, but because you disengage from emotional manipulation. Emotionally intelligent people don't win arguments, they end them. Another thing shifts inside you. You stop seeing yourself as the problem. When emotional pressure appears, you don't immediately assume you did something wrong. You don't default to self-blame. Instead, you get curious. You ask, why does this always happen when I set limits? Why does guilt show up when I prioritize myself? Why does this person react strongly to my independence? Curiosity replaces self-criticism, and curiosity is powerful because self-blame keeps you small. Understanding sets you free. As emotional intelligence deepens, your nervous system changes too. Your body doesn't go into panic mode as easily. Your heart doesn't race every time someone is displeased. Your mind doesn't spiral at the first sign of tension. You start trusting yourself, not blindly, but calmly. You know you can handle discomfort without losing yourself, and that confidence doesn't shout. It settles, and settled people are extremely difficult to manipulate because they don't need immediate relief from emotions. They can sit with them, and sitting with emotions is something manipulators can't control. Here's a real-life moment that shows this shift clearly. Someone criticizes you in a subtle way. Not openly, just enough to make you question yourself. Old version of you would replay it all day. Wonder what you did wrong, feel smaller. But now something else happens. You feel the sting, then you notice the intent. You realize the comment wasn't information, it was positioning. So you don't internalize it, you don't defend, you don't carry it home with you. You let it pass. And that's when you realize something important. Not every emotional hit deserves space in your mind. Another powerful change happens in your relationships. You become selective, not because you're closed off, but because you're clear. You notice who respects your pace, who listens without trying to control, who doesn't punish you for having boundaries. You stop investing emotionally where there's pressure, confusion, or guilt. And slowly your life becomes quieter, not lonelier, quieter. There's less emotional noise, less explaining, less managing others' reactions, and more alignment. Emotionally intelligent people don't seek power over others. They seek peace within themselves. And peace is the one thing manipulation can't touch. Another thing you stop doing is trying to be understood by everyone. You realize something freeing. Some people don't misunderstand you accidentally. They misunderstand you because understanding you would remove their leverage. So you stop trying. You let people think what they want. You know who you are. And that self-trust removes the need for external validation. Manipulation loses its grip when you don't need approval to feel stable. As emotional intelligence becomes permanent, your responses become unpredictable. Not strategic, natural. Sometimes you respond, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you disengage entirely. Manipulators rely on predictability. When they can't predict your emotional reaction, control weakens. They can't press the same buttons because the buttons no longer control you. You've outgrown them. This doesn't make life perfect, but it makes it honest. You stop participating in emotional games. You stop negotiating your self-worth. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop shrinking to keep peace. And people who rely on emotional control feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you confront them, but because you don't react. And no reaction is powerful. Here's the deepest truth of all. Emotional intelligence doesn't protect you by making you stronger than others. It protects you by making you stronger than your impulses. Once you understand your emotional patterns, no one can use them against you. Because awareness turns vulnerability into wisdom. You don't become cold, you become whole. You don't become distant, you become grounded. And grounded people cannot be pulled where they don't want to go. If this video made you realize how many times you blamed yourself for emotional pressure that wasn't yours, that's not weakness, that's growth. If it helped you see manipulation where there used to be confusion, that's clarity. And if you want to keep building a mind that's calm, aware, and impossible to control, like this video so this message reaches people who are still doubting themselves. Subscribe if you want psychology that strengthens your mind instead of feeding fear. Share this with someone who always gives too much and wonders why they feel drained. Once you master emotional intelligence, dark psychology doesn't just fail, it has nowhere to stand.